Have you ever found yourself saying yes to something, only to kind of later wonder, why? Why did I agree to that?
Oh, definitely.
Or maybe you felt this, like, undeniable pull towards a decision, and it just seemed almost automatic, like your conscious brain wasn't really even involved in the process.
Yeah, that happens more than we probably like to admit.
The truth is, we navigate a world that's constantly trying to influence us, often in ways that are so subtle they just completely escape our conscious perception.
It's everywhere, really.
So in this deep dive, we're not just, opening a book. We're really cracking open a profound user manual for human behavior. It's Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini, PhD.
A classic for a reason. It really lays it all out.
Our mission today is pretty clear. We want to unpack the core insights of this seminal work. We'll reveal the fundamental problems the author illuminates, the critical ideas you'll really want to remember, and maybe most importantly, how you can apply these principles ethically.
Right, both personally and professionally.
Exactly. And this is especially vital now as we navigate this rapidly evolving era of artificial intelligence, where influence is just being amplified in ways we've never seen before.
AI is changing the game completely.
So we'll start by exploring how our brains are kind of wired for shortcuts. It's a necessary adaptation, really, in our increasingly complex world.
You have to take shortcuts or we'd never get anything done.
Then we'll dive deep into Cialdini's 7 fundamental psychological principles of persuasion. These are like the hidden levers that move us.
The core mechanics.
And finally, we'll turn our attention to the cutting edge. How AI is dramatically changing the game and what that means for you, whether you're, say, a lifelong learner, an entrepreneur, a seasoned marketer, or, a meticulous copywriter.
It's relevant across the board.
It's time to truly understand the mechanics of influence.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
The very first problem the author, Cialdini, sets out to solve in this book isn't some, complex, abstract psychological puzzle. It's actually something incredibly relatable to our daily lives. He identifies what he calls the accelerating pace and informational crush of modern life. Just think about it for a second. We're bombarded constantly with more choices, more data, more demands on our attention than any generation before us.
It feels overwhelming sometimes. You just can't process it all.
Exactly.
So what's the consequence of that overload? Does it somehow make us more rational, more discerning? Or does it kind of ironically make us more susceptible to certain pressures?
It's exactly the opposite of what you might logically expect. This overload forces our brains into what the author describes as a click-run automatic response system.
Click, run, okay.
We simply don't have the mental bandwidth, the time, the energy to carefully analyze every single piece of information or every decision we face. So we have to rely on shortcuts. It's like our brains are forced onto autopilot much of the time.
That concept of click, run, responding immediately brings to mind that really striking example he shares about the mother turkey. It sounds almost unbelievable at first until you realize its profound implications for us too.
It truly is a stark illustration of these fixed action patterns. So the author describes how a mother turkey, which is normally a fierce protector of her chicks, really aggressive towards predators like a polecat.
Right, a natural enemy.
Will instinctively embrace and nurture a stuffed polecat, its natural enemy, solely if that stuffed polecat plays the cheep-cheep sound of a baby turkey.
Just the sound.
Just the sound.
Mm.
If you remove that specific sound, the aggression instantly returns. She'll attack the stuffed polecat. This highlights a complex, pre-programmed behavior pattern that just runs mechanically, triggered by one single specific piece of information.
Wow.
It's as if a button is pressed, click, and a standard unthinking sequence just unfolds, run.
So we humans, we have our own versions of these pre-programmed responses, these mental shortcuts. Cialdini calls them judgmental heuristics.
I know the term, yeah.
And he suggests these heuristics, things like expensive equals good, or maybe if an expert said so, it must be true. They generally serve us well, right? They're efficient most of the time.
They are. They help us navigate a complex world quickly.
But there's a significant catch, isn't there? A downside.
Indeed. A very big one. While these mental shortcuts are incredibly efficient and often pretty accurate in our complex world, they also leave us incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable how?
Well, the author points out that because most of us are completely unaware of these automatic patterns running in the background, we become, and this is his quote, terribly vulnerable to anyone who does know how they work.
Ah, okay. So There are people who understand these triggers.
Exactly. And that's where compliance professionals, salespeople, marketers, fundraisers, even politicians become, as Cialdini aptly puts it, jujitsu warriors.
Jiu-jitsu warriors, I love that analogy. It suggests they're not overtly forceful, are they? They're using our own momentum, our own tendencies.
Precisely. They're leveraging existing forces, our own natural psychological tendencies, often against our own best interests, or at least towards their interests. So their goal isn't necessarily to manipulate us through brute force persuasion or argument.
Yeah.
Instead, they skillfully align themselves with these powerful, often unconscious human inclinations to gain compliance, frequently without us ever realizing we're being guided.
So they don't have to create these tendencies. They just recognize them and sort of nudge us along a path they want us to take. It's about leveraging the predictable aspects of human behavior.
Yeah, it's subtle, often invisible, but incredibly effective.
And that's really the core mission of influence, isn't it? It's not just about exposing these tricks or tactics. It's fundamentally about giving you, the listener, a clear and comprehensive understanding of the how and why of automatic influence.
Knowledge is power here.
Right. It's about empowering you to become truly well-informed, not just to protect yourself from manipulation and exploitation, which is crucial,
Absolutely.
but also to understand how you might apply these same powerful principles ethically to achieve positive and constructive outcomes in your own life and work. It's essentially a toolkit for navigating human interaction more effectively and consciously.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
And the author's definition of persuasion in this context is quite telling, actually. He says it often boils down to a willingness to say yes without thinking first.
Without thinking first, that's the key. Automatic compliance.
That's the core challenge he addresses. So this deep dive will break down the fundamental psychological principles that elicit that kind of automatic compliance. It gives you the tools not only to recognize when they're being used on you, but also, if you choose, to employ them yourself, hopefully in ways that are transparent, ethical, and genuinely beneficial for everyone involved.
Okay, let's pull back the curtain then on the first of these powerful levers of influence. Principle 1, reciprocation, the old give and take. This principle feels almost ancient, right?
Yeah.
Deeply woven into the fabric of human society.
Or really is foundational.
The core idea is that we feel this inherent, often totally unconscious sense of indebtedness to those who give us something first. This creates a powerful internal obligation to repay the favor.
And what's so fundamental about this rule, Cialdini explains, is its societal purpose. It's absolutely crucial for human societies because it allows individuals to initiate relationships, to offer kindness or a resource, like sharing food or helping out, without the fear of immediate loss.
Ah, so it enables cooperation.
Exactly. It fosters beneficial exchanges and long-term cooperation, knowing there's this widespread, unspoken expectation of repayment down the line. We're trained from childhood, really socialized, to feel uncomfortable being seen as a moocher or a freeloader.
Nobody wants to be that person.
Right. And that social pressure is a powerful engine driving reciprocity.
That makes perfect sense. I think many of us have experienced this without even consciously thinking about it. The book recounts that fascinating anecdote about the university professor.
The Christmas card experiment.
Yeah, he simply, as an experiment, sent Christmas cards to a list of complete strangers, people he didn't know at all.
And he was genuinely astonished.
Yeah, totally astonished by the sheer volume of cards he received in return. Most of these recipients never even bothered to find out who this guy was. They just received his greeting card, and then, without conscious thought, they just clicked into action.
Click run.
Exactly. They ran their pre-programmed reciprocation response and sent one back. It's pure, unthinking reciprocity in action. It bypasses rational thought.
It's remarkable how automatic it can be. And consider the classic Dennis Reagan's Coke study. This one's really illustrative.
Okay, tell us about that one.
So, subjects were brought in supposedly to rate some art. During a break, an experimenter, let's call him Joe, leaves the room. In one condition, Joe comes back with 2 Cokes, one for himself and one for the subject, saying something like, "Oh, I went to get myself a Coke and bought one for you too." An unsolicited gift.
Okay, a small favor.
A small, unexpected favor. Later on, Joe asked the subject if they'd be willing to buy some raffle tickets from him. What Reagan found was that subjects who received that unsolicited Coke from Joe bought significantly more raffle tickets from him afterwards.
More than people who didn't get a Coke.
Way more. And here's the kicker. This was true even if they didn't particularly like Joe.
Right.
They rated their liking for Joe separately, and the effect of the Coke boosting ticket sales held up even for people who said they didn't like him much.
Wow. So the obligation trumped liking.
The power of the reciprocation rule often overpowers other factors, like personal liking and driving compliance. The subjects felt obligated by the gift, regardless of their personal feelings about the giver.
So it's no surprise that companies have definitely picked up on this. The author details Amway's bug strategy, remember that? That collection of household products they'd leave with a potential customer for a trial period at no cost or obligation.
Oh yeah, the free sample tactic, scaled up.
It's incredibly effective, apparently, because people feel obligated to purchase something from the collection, even if they haven't used much of the product or, don't particularly like it that much.
It's that uninvited first favor, creating an unspoken but very powerful obligation. What's kind of insidious about it isn't just the initial gift, it's how it subtly turns your own home into this silent sales agent. It creates this constant, passive pressure to reciprocate that's really hard to ignore when the products are sitting right there.
You feel guilty just looking at them.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And this principle is also the psychological engine behind a highly effective negotiation tactic known as the rejection then retreat technique. You might have heard it called the door in the face technique.
Door in the face. Okay, how does that work?
Here, you start by asking for a really large favor, something you fully expect the other person to refuse. For instance, Cialdini describes asking college students if they'd be willing to volunteer as counselors for juvenile delinquents for 2 hours a week for 2 years.
Okay, that's a huge commitment. Most would say no.
Exactly. Almost everyone refuses. But then, immediately after they refuse that extreme large request, you follow up with a smaller, more reasonable request, the one you actually wanted all along.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, well, if you can't do that, would you be willing to chaperone a group of these delinquents on a trip to the zoo for just one afternoon?
So you retreat to a smaller request.
You retreat. And in the experiments, 3 times as many students agreed to the zoo trip when approached this way, compared to those who were only asked about the zoo trip initially without the big refusal first.
That's a massive difference. Why does that work so well?
It leverages 2 psychological principles. First, perceptual contrast. Compared to the huge 2-year commitment, the one-afternoon zoo trip seems tiny and much more reasonable. But second, and more powerfully, it triggers reciprocation. The retreat from the large request to the smaller one is perceived as a concession on your part.
Like you did them a favor by backing down.
Exactly. You made a concession, so now they feel obligated to reciprocate with a concession of their own, which is agreeing to the smaller request.
That's brilliant in its psychological manipulation, really. And the author even suggests, speculatively, that this principle might offer an unexpected explanation for seemingly irrational decisions in history, like the infamous and frankly kind of stupid decision to break into the Watergate offices.
The Watergate connection is fascinating.
Yeah, he posits maybe a larger, more extreme initial request, like G. Gordon Liddy's overly ambitious and illegal gemstone plan involving kidnapping, sabotage, prostitutes, millions of dollars.
Which was rejected as insane, right?
Right, it was rejected.
Yeah.
But perhaps that rejection then created an opening for a retreat to a smaller, though still illegal and risky, break-in plan. By comparison to Gemstone, the break-in might have seemed more reasonable, more achievable, leveraging that sense of concession from Liddy.
It makes you wonder how often that dynamic plays out in group decisions.
Definitely. And what's truly remarkable about the rejection then retreat technique, Cialdini points out, is not just the increased compliance in the moment.
There's more.
Yeah, it's the subsequent feelings of the person who says yes. Victims of this technique, they don't just comply more often, but they also report feeling more responsible for the negotiated agreement. They feel like they helped shape the final outcome.
Because they forced the concession.
Right. And they also report being more satisfied with it. This satisfaction and sense of responsibility lead to higher rates of future compliance. For example, in studies on blood donations, students who agreed to donate blood as part of the Door in the Face group were significantly more willing to donate again in the future compared to those who agreed directly.
Wow, so it creates longer-term commitment, too.
Exactly. They felt they had genuinely influenced the terms, making it their decision, not something they were pressured into.
So this is a formidable force, this reciprocity rule. How do you defend yourself against feeling obligated when maybe you shouldn't, or when it's being used as a tactic?
That's the million-dollar question.
The key defense, according to Cialdini, lies in heightened awareness and accurate recognition. You have to learn to consciously discern if an initial favor or gift is a genuine act of kindness, freely given with no strings attached.
Or if it's a hook.
Or if it's a calculated compliance device, a tactic designed to make you feel indebted. If you perceive it as a trick, as an attempt at exploitation, then the rule of reciprocation, ethically speaking, doesn't apply. You are not obligated to reciprocate exploitation.
So you can mentally reframe it.
You reframe it. Recognize the gift not as a gift, but as a sales device. Then you're free to accept it, or not, without triggering the feeling of obligation. You can simply and calmly even state that you recognize the tactic and are choosing not to comply based on that. The power lies in identifying and calling out the game, at least in your own mind.
That's powerful. Okay, let's move on to principle 2. Liking the friendly thief. This one seems almost self-evident on the surface. Obviously, we're significantly more likely to say yes to people we know and like.
Sure, that makes intuitive sense.
But the author shows us the subtle, often unconscious factors that actually drive this liking, making it a surprisingly potent and often manipulated tool of influence.
Indeed. What's particularly insightful in this book is the breakdown of why we like people, digging deeper than just they're nice. Take physical attractiveness, for instance.
Okay, the halo effect.
Exactly. There's a pervasive unconscious halo effect where attractive individuals are automatically and unfairly perceived as more talented, kinder, more honest, more intelligent, and generally more trustworthy. We just assume good-looking people have other good qualities too.
Even if there's no evidence for it.
Zero evidence needed. Cialdini recounts a story from a medical malpractice attorney who observed, based on his experience, that people just don't sue the doctors they like. This highlights how a subjective feeling, like liking based partly on appearance or demeanor, can actually overshadow objective performance or even perceived negligence in high-stakes situations.
That's kind of scary. So it's not just about supermodels and ads trying to sell us stuff, but a general cognitive bias that affects our judgments across the board.
It really is. And then there's similarity. We naturally gravitate towards and feel more positive about people who are like us.
Birds of a feather.
Pretty much. This can involve sharing opinions, personality traits, background, lifestyle, even subtle things like minor facial similarities. Research has shown voters often unconsciously prefer political candidates who bear even a slight facial resemblance to themselves.
Wow, that's subtle.
And compliance professionals exploit this relentlessly by manufacturing similarity. They are specifically trained to mirror body posture, vocal tone, verbal style.
Like literally copying movements.
Yes, subtly mirroring posture or gestures. They also try to dig for contrived commonalities, finding any small thing they might have in common with you, whether it's a hobby, hometown, favorite sports team, anything to create a superficial bond.
I've seen salespeople do that, asking where you're from, trying to find a connection.
It works. Consider food servers who are trained to simply mimic their customers' words when repeating the order back. They consistently received significantly higher tips. Salespeople who mirrored customers' movements or verbal patterns were found to sell more electronic equipment.
And this is happening online too, you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. Even in the digital realm, online persuaders are now advised to use AI tools to analyze customer communications, emails, chat messages, and then generate responses that subtly mirror the customer's language style, their vocabulary, even their sentence structure. It's all about creating that subconscious feeling of, this person is like me.
It can feel almost eerie when you realize how precisely these tactics are being researched and employed. Okay, but what about compliments? Surely even obvious flattery doesn't really work on savvy people, does it?
You'd think not, but surprisingly, yes. Even praise, isn't entirely sincere, can still work. We seem to have an automatic positive reaction to flattery. Yeah. Cialdini references studies where individuals received flattering feedback from a computer on digital assignments. Even when they knew the feedback was pre-programmed and generic, they still reported feeling more favorable toward the machine itself and prouder of their performance.
So even a computer compliment works.
Apparently so. And then there's Joe Girard, who was recognized by Guinness World Records as the world's greatest car salesman for years. What was one of his main tactics? He famously sent personalized I like you cards to his massive list of over 150,000 former customers every single month.
Every month. What did the cards say?
Just that. The message was simply, I like you, and his name. That's it. It was transparent flattery on a mass scale, but he swore by it, and it clearly worked for him. And of course, if obvious flattery works, genuine honest praise is even more potent in building liking.
I can certainly see the appeal of being genuinely appreciated. Okay, what about cooperation? Working together toward common goals, that seems like a very natural and positive way to build rapport and liking.
It absolutely is, and it's incredibly powerful. One fantastic example from the book is the jigsaw classroom experiment. This was designed specifically to reduce intergroup hostility and prejudice in newly desegregated schools.
How did it work?
Students from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds were put into small groups, and each student was given only one jigsaw piece, of the information needed to learn the day's lesson. They had to cooperate, share their unique information, and help each other to succeed on the upcoming test.
So they were interdependent.
Exactly.
Mhm.
This structure effectively forced cooperation and transformed rivalry and suspicion into genuine liking and reduced prejudice. They started seeing kids from other groups, not as competitors, but as teammates they needed.
That's a great application.
Similarly, the classic Robbers Cave experiment with rival groups of Boy Scouts showed the same thing. Initial competitions created intense hostility between the groups. But when the researchers imposed shared superordinate goals that required the two groups to work together, like fixing the camp's water supply or pooling money to rent a movie, the animosity dissolved and friendships formed across group lines.
So shared struggle builds bonds.
It really does. Even the familiar good cop, bad cop interrogation technique works partly on this principle. The bad cop creates the threat, the common enemy, and then the good cop appears to step in seemingly on your side, fostering a perceived sense of cooperation against the bad cop, which builds rapport and encourages confession.
Clever. Finally, there's the principle of association, connecting yourself or your product with positive things. This seems like the bedrock of advertising.
It really is. It's why you see attractive models draped over cars and ads, or why companies try desperately to link their products with current positive trends like naturalness, sustainability, or eco-friendly, even if the connection is pretty tenuous. They want the positive feelings associated with those concepts to transfer to their product.
Makes sense. But it also works in reverse, right? People avoid being the bearer of bad news.
Absolutely. The classic example Cialdini gives is the poor TV weatherman who receives actual hate mail and threats when the weather is bad, as if he caused it. People instinctively dislike those who bring them unpleasant information. There are even studies showing students actively avoid delivering bad phone messages to others. We don't want to be associated with negativity.
So putting it all together, how do you defend yourself against the subtle influence of the liking principle, especially when it feels like someone is deliberately trying to get you to like them to sell you something?
The key strategy here is heightened vigilance and conscious separation. Be acutely alert to developing an undue liking for a compliance professional, someone trying to persuade you or sell you something.
Undue liking, meaning liking them more than you'd expect or faster.
Exactly. When you find yourself feeling an unexpected or disproportionate warmth, charm, or attraction toward this person, especially quickly, pause. That feeling, that emotional trigger, is your signal. It doesn't mean they are being manipulative, but it's a warning sign.
So what do you do then?
Take a mental step back. Consciously separate the person from the product or the request. Force yourself to evaluate the deal based solely on its objective merits. Ask yourself, is this product truly what I need? Is it offered at a fair price? Would I buy this from someone I didn't like? Make the decision about the thing, not the person.
Separate the dealer from the deal.
That's a great way to put it. Focus on the merits, not the messenger's charm.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's move on to principle 3. Social proof truths are us. This feels like another incredibly powerful lever, especially now, given our increasingly digital and interconnected world.
Oh, massively powerful.
The core idea is pretty simple, right? When we're uncertain about what to do, how to behave, what to think, we look to others' behavior to determine what is correct, appropriate, or desirable. We basically assume that if a lot of people are doing something, it must be the right thing to do.
It's deeply ingrained in us. As the sales consultant Cabot Robert, quoted by Cialdini, succinctly put it, since 95% of the people are imitators and only 5% initiators, people are persuaded more by the actions of others than by any proof we can offer.
Wow, 95% imitators. That's a stark ratio.
It highlights the mechanism, doesn't it? This pervasive human tendency to look to the crowd for validation, for cues on how to act, especially when we're feeling unsure about a decision. It's a shortcut. Assume the crowd knows best.
And we see this principle applied absolutely everywhere, often so subtly we don't even notice it. A Beijing restaurant, for example, Cialdini mentions, significantly increased sales of certain dishes on their menu simply by labeling them most popular.
No change to the dish itself.
Nope. Just adding that social proof label, people saw most popular and thought, okay, that must be good, and ordered it more.
It's amazing how simple signals work. And it extends to far more overt and sometimes deceptive manipulations. Think about nightclub owners who are known to deliberately create fake lines outside their establishments.
Right, to make it look busy and desirable.
Exactly. Makes it seem more exclusive, more popular than it might actually be. Bartenders sometimes salt their tip jars by putting a few large bills in at the start of their shift to suggest that generous tipping is the norm here.
Setting expectations.
Salespeople often invent customer anecdotes. Oh yeah, Mrs. Jones down the street just bought one of these and she loves it, to manufacture social proof on the spot.
And in the digital realm, this has just exploded, hasn't it? With fake online reviews.
It's a massive problem. Research consistently shows that a staggering percentage, often cited around 98%, of online shoppers rely on reviews to make purchase decisions. As one cosmetics company owner admitted, the power of reviews is mighty. People look to what others are saying to persuade them.
So they're outsourcing their decision-making to the crowd.
Essentially, yes. And the terrifying thing now with AI is that creating thousands of realistic-sounding, seemingly authentic fake reviews is becoming trivially easy and highly scalable. Distinguishing genuine social proof from manufactured proof online is getting harder and harder.
That's a huge reliance on what might be completely fabricated social proof. But Cialdini points out it's not just about buying things, right? This principle influences much more profound aspects of human behavior, things like morality, criminality, even public health decisions.
Absolutely. The influence is incredibly wide-ranging. For instance, one study found college students were more likely to accept torture as morally acceptable after being told that a majority of their peers favored it. Their moral compass shifted based on perceived peer approval. Drinking and driving becomes statistically more prevalent if individuals believe that others in their social circle engage in it frequently. It normalizes the behavior. Conversely, on the positive side, learning that the majority of one's peers eat fruit regularly can significantly increase an individual's own fruit consumption.
So it cuts both ways.
It demonstrates how profoundly our perception of normal behavior, what's acceptable or desirable, is shaped by what we believe others are doing and thinking.
That's a little unsettling, actually, when you think about the potential for negative impacts, especially when you consider phenomena like the Werther effect, which Cialdini discusses. That's quite chilling.
The Werther effect is a really stark example of the dark side. Named after Goethe's novel The Sorrows of Young Werther, which supposedly sparked copycat suicides.
Right.
It describes the well-documented phenomenon where highly publicized suicides in the media can lead to a measurable, statistically significant increase in copycat suicides shortly thereafter.
It actually causes more suicides.
Yes, and disturbingly, it can even correlate with inexplicable increases in things like fatal single car crashes and single plane crashes, particularly among people similar in age and circumstance to the person whose suicide was publicized.
How could it affect car crashes?
The theory is that some individuals, perhaps in a state of deep uncertainty, despair, or isolation, identify strongly with the victims whose stories are publicized. Seeing suicide seemingly validated or chosen by someone like them might make it seem like a more viable or even appropriate course of action, potentially leading to disguised suicides presenting as accidents.
That is truly dark. It highlights the danger when people are vulnerable.
Absolutely. And Jonestown mass suicide is another extreme and horrifying illustration of social proof under duress. The members of the People's Temple, after relocating to the isolated jungle of Guyana, experienced extreme uncertainty, alienation, and perceived threat from the outside world.
Cut off from other viewpoints.
Completely. This made them incredibly susceptible to the social proof provided by the actions of their fellow members. When the first few people complied with the order to drink the poison flavor aid, their actions provided powerful, tragic social proof for the others in that moment of extreme crisis, ultimately leading to mass self-destruction.
It's hard to fathom, and it's not just about tragedy, it's also about how we frame things. The example Cialdini gives about the Petrified Forest National Park signs is a stark reminder of getting social proof wrong.
Oh, that was fascinating. They wanted to reduce the theft of petrified wood, which was a big problem.
Right, so they put up a sign?
Their initial sign said something like, "Many past visitors have removed petrified wood, damaging the park." It showed pictures of multiple people stealing wood. They were trying to highlight the problem.
Okay, seems reasonable. What happened?
Theft tripled.
Tripled. Why?
Because the sign inadvertently normalized the behavior. It sent the message, look, lots of people do this. It provided social proof for stealing. Big oops. So they changed the sign to something like, please don't remove petrified wood, in order to preserve the natural state of the park. And this sign showed a picture of a lone thief with a red circle and slash over them, marginalizing the behavior.
Making it seem deviant, not normal.
Exactly. And that sign significantly reduced theft. It shows how absolutely crucial the framing of social proof is. You can unintentionally encourage the very behavior you want to prevent if you're not careful.
That's a critical lesson for communication.
And this brings us to a really important related concept: pluralistic ignorance.
Okay, what's that?
This often happens in ambiguous emergency situations. Imagine someone collapses on a busy street. Everyone sees it, but nobody's quite sure if it's serious or what to do. So what do? They look around at others to see how they are reacting.
Trying to get cues from the crowd.
Exactly. But if everyone else is also looking around, appearing calm and unsure, then everyone concludes, based on the inaction of others, that it must not be an emergency after all. So nobody helps.
Even though privately, everyone might be concerned.
Precisely. Everyone assumes someone else knows more or will act, and the collective inaction reinforces the idea that action isn't needed. It can lead to tragic outcomes. Cialdini tells the counter-story of a Polish woman who, seeing others pass by a car in a ditch, felt that same uncertainty but decided to stop anyway, overcoming that pluralistic ignorance. She saved the driver's life. It's a powerful lesson in trusting your own judgment sometimes.
So when is social proof most influential?
Cialdini stresses it's most powerful under two key conditions. First, uncertainty. When we are unsure of ourselves, when the situation is ambiguous, we are much more likely to look to others for guidance. Second, similarity. The proof is even more potent when it comes from the many, or perhaps even more powerfully from similar others. We are most influenced by the actions of people we perceive as being like us.
If people like me are doing it, it must be right for me.
That's the thinking.
So, given how powerful and often invisible this force is, how do we defend ourselves? How do we avoid just following the herd, potentially off a cliff?
The primary defense is to actively question social proof, especially in ambiguous or high-stakes situations. Cultivate a healthy skepticism. Don't just automatically accept that because everyone is doing it, it's the right thing to do.
Look closer.
Exactly. When you see claims of widespread popularity, online reviews, long lines, ask yourself, is this genuinely popular? Or is this being manufactured? Is this real social proof or fake evidence? Be ready to strike back against faked evidence. Cialdini argues this isn't just passive defense, it requires active resistance.
What does he mean by strike back?
If you discover a brand is using fake reviews, boycott them and tell others. If you see an establishment faking lines, walk away and maybe even leave a real review mentioning it. If you encounter AI-generated deception presented as social proof, call it out publicly if you can. Your informed choices and making those choices visible can help to erode the effectiveness of these exploitative tactics over time. It's about safeguarding the reliability of our shortcuts.
Protecting the commons of reliable information. Okay. Let's move to Principle 4, authority-directed deference. This one taps into something very deep in our societal conditioning, doesn't it? A pervasive, often unquestioning respect for those in positions of power or expertise.
Oh, absolutely. It's drilled into us from a very young age.
The core idea is that we have this strong, ingrained tendency to obey authority figures, even at times to our own detriment or against our own judgment.
The mechanism here is deeply rooted in our upbringing and the structure of society. From childhood, we are taught to respect and obey authority figures: parents, teachers, police officers, doctors, bosses. And honestly, it's often an incredibly efficient shortcut for complex decisions.
How so?
Well, if a recognized expert or a legitimate authority tells you something, the assumption is they probably know best, right? So you save yourself the mental effort, the time, the research of figuring it out yourself.
Yeah.
You just defer to their judgment. It works well most of the time.
Until it doesn't. The classic and frankly chilling example has to be Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments back in the 60s.
Still shocking to read about today.
Yeah. Ordinary people, recruited through a newspaper ad, were willing to inflict what they believed were increasingly dangerous, even potentially fatal electrical shocks on another person, an actor, thankfully, simply because an authority figure in a lab coat calmly instructed them to continue as part of a supposed learning experiment.
Despite the learners screaming in pain, pleading to stop.
Right. It's profoundly unsettling how far people went. And Cialdini notes an interesting wrinkle. When participants were faced with conflicting authorities arguing about whether to continue, they became paralyzed until a bigger boss, the senior researcher, stepped in and gave a definitive order. It shows just how powerful and overriding this tendency to obey a clear authority can be.
And this mindless deference, as Cialdini points out, can have serious, even fatal, real-world consequences, especially in high-stakes fields like medicine. He tells a notorious rectal earache story.
Oh, I remember that one. It's almost darkly comedic if it weren't so alarming.
Exactly. A physician wrote an ambiguous prescription for eardrops for a patient's infected right ear. He abbreviated it as place in our ear.
Right. Seems clear enough.
You'd think, but the duty nurse read our ear as rear. And because doctors are the ultimate authority in that setting, she didn't question it. She proceeded to administer the eardrops, anally.
Oh, no.
Yes, the nurse, and even the patient, deferred completely to the perceived authority of the prescription, essentially, as Cialdini puts it, unhooking their professional intelligences in the face of a directive from authority, however nonsensical it seemed.
That's terrifying. And it's not just actual legitimate authority figures that exert this influence, is it? The book highlights how the symbols of authority are often just as powerful, and they're masterfully leveraged by con artists, advertisers, and compliance professionals because they trigger our automatic compliance almost instantly.
Precisely. We often don't respond to the actual substance of authority, but to its mere trappings. The success of commercials featuring actors playing doctors. Cialdini mentions Chris Robinson, a popular soap opera actor at the time, endorsing Vicks Formula 44 cough medicine in a doctor's coat.
People knew he wasn't a real doctor.
Of course. But the symbol, the title doctor, implied the white coat was enough to lend credibility and boost sales. We are incredibly susceptible to the symbols of authority, not just the substance. These symbols reliably trigger our deference without demanding any genuine expertise behind them.
So what are the main symbols Cialdini identifies?
He highlights three primary ones that are often used, sometimes deceptively. First, titles. Simply using a prestigious title like doctor, professor, judge, or even CEO can instantly elevate perceived status, expertise, and trustworthiness. People are often unduly swayed just by the title itself, assuming competence.
Got it. Titles. What else?
Second, clothes. Uniforms are incredibly powerful symbols. Think about how much more readily people comply with someone in a security guard uniform, even if it's just a costume. But it's not just uniforms. Even a well-tailored business suit conveys authority and status. Cialdini cites a study where a researcher jaywalked across the street, once in casual clothes, once in a business suit. When wearing the suit, 3.5 times more pedestrians followed him against the light.
Just based on the suit.
Just the suit signaled, this person knows what they're doing, or has status, apparently. And third, trappings. These are the other accessories of status, things like expensive cars, designer clothes, luxury watches, opulent jewelry. These items convey economic standing and position, signaling success and, by extension, often implying authority and expertise, even if unrelated. Con artists often use these trappings to create an illusion of success and trustworthiness.
Okay. Titles, clothes, trappings. Easy shortcuts for our brains, but easily faked. So how can we really trust an authority, especially when they might be consciously using these symbols to influence us? How do we discern true expertise from mere pretense?
That's the critical challenge. Cialdini provides a very interesting insight here for establishing genuine trustworthiness, something ethical influencers can use, and that we should be aware of when evaluating others. One powerful tactic is actually admitting shortcomings.
Admitting flaws makes you more trustworthy. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but think about it. Communicators who first mention a minor flaw, a limitation in their product, or even a past mistake before highlighting their strengths, paradoxically gain immense trust and credibility. It makes them seem honest and objective.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think of Avis Rent-A-Car's classic, incredibly successful tagline from years ago, where #2, we try harder. They openly acknowledge a limitation, not being the market leader, which made their subsequent promise of effort far more believable and relatable.
Right, it felt honest.
Or consider Warren Buffett, the legendary investor. In his annual letters to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, he often transparently discusses his past investing mistakes or acknowledges challenges facing the company. This perceived honesty builds deeper trust in his assessment of Berkshire's strength because he appears humble and realistic, not just promotional.
That makes sense. It lowers your guard.
It does. And this even applies to online reviews. Research shows that having too many perfect 5-star ratings can actually undermine trustworthiness. Potential customers get suspicious, thinking they might be fake. The presence of a few negative reviews, even minor ones, often adds credibility and can significantly increase conversion rates because the overall picture seems more authentic and balanced.
So perfection is suspicious. Okay, knowing all this, how do we defend ourselves against this powerful, often unconscious deference to authority, whether real or symbolic?
Cialdini suggests you should train yourself to ask two crucial questions whenever you feel yourself automatically deferring to an authority figure. First, is this authority truly an expert?
Focusing on substance over symbols.
Exactly. This forces you to look beyond the titles, clothes, and trappings and focus on their actual credentials, their relevant experience, and, importantly, whether their expertise is directly applicable to the specific situation at hand. Is this doctor an expert in this particular condition? Is this financial advisor truly knowledgeable about this type of investment?
Okay, check the expertise and its relevance. What's the second question?
Second, how truthful can we expect this expert to be in this situation? Authorities are still people, and they might have their own biases or motives. Be alert to those trust-enhancing tactics we just discussed, like admitting minor flaws. Are they being genuinely honest, or are they merely using a calculated tactic to make you trust them more easily so they can persuade you? Consider their potential vested interests in your compliance.
So assess their expertise and then assess their likely trustworthiness in this context.
Right. This critical evaluation helps you make informed decisions based on the merits, rather than simply complying out of habit or being swayed by symbols.
Okay, moving on. Next up is Principle 5. Scarcity, the rule of the rare. This is the one that often makes us feel that urgent impulse, that fear of missing out, right? It spurs an almost immediate, sometimes irrational desire.
Definitely. FOMO is basically scarcity in action.
The core idea is simple. Opportunities, products, information, they all seem significantly more valuable to us when their availability is limited, or at least when we perceive it to be limited.
And the mechanism here, Cialdini explains, is deeply rooted in a fundamental aspect of human psychology, what economists and psychologists call loss aversion.
Loss aversion, meaning we hate losing things.
More than that, we as humans are far more motivated by the thought of losing something we currently possess or something we desire and might miss out on than we are by the thought of gaining something of equal objective value. The potential for loss activates a much stronger emotional response and drives a more urgent desire for action than the potential for gain.
Interesting. So avoiding a loss feels more important than achieving a gain.
Generally speaking, yes. This is a very powerful, often unconscious motivator that the scarcity principle taps into directly.
This principle perfectly explains why salespeople and marketers constantly use limited number and deadline tactics. You hear it all the time. Only 3 left at this price. Or sale ends Tuesday. Or offer expires at midnight.
Classic scarcity plays.
They're designed specifically to spur immediate action, to prevent you from taking time to think, compare prices, or reconsider. Cialdini gives the example of the car salesperson who tells a wavering customer that the specific car they're considering is the last one with those options, and another couple is interested, creating urgency. If that doesn't seal the deal, sometimes another identical car mysteriously appears later.
But by then, the psychological pressure has been applied.
Right, and this ties into a profound psychological phenomenon Cialdini discusses called psychological reactance.
Reactance, that's when we push back against restrictions.
Exactly. When our freedoms are restricted, or when something we desire becomes unavailable or forbidden, we don't just accept it. Instead, we desire that restricted item or freedom even more, and we actively resist the restriction. We push back.
You see this so clearly in the Terrible Twos, right? When toddlers suddenly start saying no to everything as they assert their independence.
Definitely. And in rebellious teenagers pushing boundaries. But Cialdini emphasizes it's just as true for adults, maybe just expressed more subtly.
How so?
While he cites studies showing, for example, that supermarket shoppers in Florida became more supportive of signing a petition after it was publicly opposed by a county official. The opposition made them want to exercise their freedom to sign it even more.
Ah, the forbidden fruit effect.
Precisely. It's also seen in the classic Romeo and Juliet effect, which isn't just a literary device. Real-world studies suggest that parental opposition and interference can actually intensify romantic attraction and commitment between young lovers. Trying to keep them apart makes them want to be together more.
Makes sense. What else?
Even censorship works this way. Banned information. A book, a movie, a controversial viewpoint is not only desired more by people, but it's also often viewed more favorably, perceived as more true or valid than it was before the ban was imposed. The act of censoring lends it credibility and allure.
So trying to suppress something can backfire spectacularly.
It often does. Cialdini even mentions how jury instructions to disregard that evidence can sometimes backfire in court, making that specific piece of forbidden evidence even more salient and influential in the jurors' minds simply because they were told they couldn't consider it.
That's wild.
Hmm.
Our brains just don't like being told no. So if something is taken away or made difficult to access, we want it even more. Are there specific conditions when scarcity is most powerful? Does the context matter? Absolutely. Cialdini identifies two conditions under which the scarcity principle is most effective, based on research. First, scarcity is most powerful when it is newly imposed.
Newly imposed, meaning something just became scarce.
Exactly. A sudden drop from abundance to scarcity is far more impactful psychologically than a consistent, long-standing scarcity that people are used to. The famous cookie experiment illustrated this perfectly.
Tell me about the cookie experiment.
Participants were asked to rate the quality of chocolate chip cookies. Some were given a cookie from a jar that contained 10 cookies. Others were given a cookie from a jar that contained only 2 cookies.
Okay, so one abundant, one scarce.
Right. But here's the twist. A third group first saw a jar with 10 cookies. But then, before they could take one, the experimenter took away 8 cookies, leaving only 2, explaining the rest were needed for other participants. So they experienced scarcity that was newly imposed.
They saw the abundance disappear.
Exactly. And those participants rated the cookies as significantly more desirable, more attractive, and even potentially more expensive than the participants who only ever saw the jar with 2 cookies from the start. The perception of loss from abundance dramatically amplified the cookie's perceived value.
Fascinating. What's the second condition?
The second condition that amplifies scarcity is direct competition. When we perceive that we are competing with others for the same scarce item, our desire for it skyrockets. Think about auctions or Black Friday doorbuster sales. Knowing others also want what's limited heightens the urgency and the perceived value immensely.
The thrill of the chase, combined with fear of losing out to rivals.
Precisely.
That makes me think of Coca-Cola's massive new Coke fiasco back in the 80s. That seems like a perfect storm of these scarcity principles.
It really does. They didn't just introduce new Coke. They abruptly pulled the traditional beloved formula from the shelves entirely.
Creating sudden, newly imposed scarcity.
Exactly. And for a product deeply tied to people's personal history, traditions, and sense of identity, people went absolutely wild. They hoarded old Coke, held protests, demanded the original formula back. The company massively underestimated the power of psychological reactants and the value people placed on something familiar once it became unavailable.
It became incredibly valuable because it was gone.
And there was likely a sense of competition, too, trying to find those last remaining bottles of the original. It was a historic marketing blunder, but a powerful demonstration of scarcity.
Cialdini also gives a really poignant example of this with the U.S. Army's decision to give all soldiers black berets.
Ah, yes, the beret example. That caused a huge uproar.
Why was that such a big deal?
Because previously, the black beret had been exclusive to the elite Army Rangers. It was a hard-earned symbol of their distinctiveness, their rigorous training, their accomplishments. It was valuable partly because it was scarce and exclusive.
So giving it to everyone diluted its value.
Exactly. The decision to make it standard issue stripped the Rangers of that earned exclusivity, that unique symbol that made their beret valuable and meaningful. The loss of that distinctiveness, driven by the removal of scarcity, felt like a direct threat to their group identity and status, inciting strong denunciations and widespread discontent among Rangers and veterans.
It shows that scarcity isn't just about material goods, but also symbols and status. Okay, so how do we defend against this powerful emotional trigger, this almost automatic blood comes up reaction, as Cialdini vividly describes it, when we encounter scarcity tactics?
The defense here lies primarily in recognizing that intense emotional arousal that scarcity triggers within you. When you feel that visceral blood comes up, reaction, that sudden urgency, that anxiety, that fear of missing out, FOMO, that physical sensation is your critical signal.
So don't ignore the feeling. Use it.
Use it as a warning bell. Pause. Take a deep breath. Instead of reacting immediately and impulsively buying the thing or agreeing to the offer, consciously redirect your focus. Ask yourself the crucial question: why do I truly want this item?
Separate the scarcity from the actual utility.
Precisely. Assess its true merit, its intrinsic value, its function. Do I want it for what it does, or just because it's rare or might disappear? Evaluate it completely separate from its limited availability. Is it genuinely valuable to me, or am I just reacting emotionally to the threat of losing the opportunity to have it? The goal is to short-circuit the emotional response and engage your rational evaluation system before making a decision.
Easier said than done sometimes, but crucial. Okay, let's tackle Principle 6, commitment and consistency hobgoblins of the mind. This one really gets into the fascinating, sometimes illogical ways we rationalize our own behavior and how desperately we try to manage our self-image.
It's a really powerful driver of behavior, maybe one of the most fundamental.
The core idea, as Cialdini lays it out, is that we feel this incredibly strong psychological pressure, both internal and external, to be, and perhaps even more importantly, to appear to be, consistent with our past actions, our words, our stated beliefs, and our attitudes. Once we commit to something, we feel compelled to follow through.
And this mechanism is so powerful for a couple of key reasons. First, consistency is generally a highly valued trait in society. We view consistent people as rational, stable, reliable, trustworthy. Inconsistent people seem flaky or untrustworthy, so there's social pressure.
We want others to see us as consistent.
Exactly. But beyond social approval, consistency also provides a convenient mental shortcut for us. Once we've made a decision or taken a stand on an issue, we don't have to reevaluate every similar situation from scratch every single time. We can just rely on our previous commitment. It reduces mental effort and simplifies future decision-making. Click, run, again.
That makes sense. And Amazon's pay-to-quit program is a brilliant, almost counterintuitive real-world example of leveraging consistency in a fascinating way.
Yeah, tell us about that one again. They offer money to employees.
Right. They offer employees, particularly those in fulfillment centers who maybe aren't performing well or seem disengaged, up to $5,000 to leave the company, no questions asked. The offer is titled, "Please don't take this offer."
Okay, why do they do that?
Well, it serves two purposes. First, it efficiently weeds out employees who aren't really committed. But second, and perhaps more importantly psychologically, it profoundly solidifies the allegiance and commitment of those employees who choose to stay. How does it solidify their commitment?
By actively turning down the easy money, by making a conscious, public, at least to themselves and maybe their peers, and somewhat difficult choice to stay, they have made a strong commitment to the company. They have to internally justify why they turned down $5,000. Their subsequent actions are likely to be much more consistent with that demonstrated commitment. They've publicly affirmed their dedication.
Wow, that's using consistency pressure internally. And what about that toy company strategy Cialdini mentions, the one around Christmas? That feels less ethical.
It's notoriously clever, if arguably manipulative. Toy companies apparently know which toys will be the big hits for Christmas. They deliberately undersupply these popular, heavily advertised toys before the holiday.
Creating scarcity, we just talked about that.
Right, so parents, unable to find the specific toy their child desperately wants, often end up promising their child, "Okay, I couldn't find it now, but I promise I'll get it for you after Christmas." They make a commitment to their child.
Ah, the commitment.
Exactly. Then what happens after Christmas, in January and February, when toy sales typically slump? The companies start running heavy advertising campaigns for those exact same toys that were scarce before.
Reminding the kids.
Reminding the kids, who then naturally start demanding the toy their parent promised them. And what do the parents do? To remain consistent with their promise, to uphold their word to their child, they feel obligated to go out and buy the toy now, even though the initial Christmas frenzy is over.
That's a double whammy: scarcity before, consistency after. Masterful, if a bit cynical.
It illustrates the power perfectly. And remember the simple, "How are you feeling this evening?" technique used by charity collectors.
Vaguely, how did that work?
Before making their actual request, like asking for a donation or selling cookies for charity, the collectors would first ask potential donors this simple, innocuous question: "How are you feeling this evening?" Most people give a standard positive reply like, "Fine," or "Good, thanks."
Okay, seems like normal small talk.
But that initial small public commitment to feeling fine or good made people significantly more likely to agree to the subsequent request for a donation. Why? Because refusing to help someone after having just declared you feel good would create cognitive dissonance. It would feel inconsistent with their positive self-assessment. They wanted to maintain that image of being a good, agreeable person.
Just that simple question sets the trap.
It subtly guides them towards compliance. This is also the fundamental psychological basis of the widely used foot-in-the-door technique.
Right, start small, then go big.
Exactly. The strategy involves securing a small initial commitment, something easy to agree to, which then makes people much more likely to comply with a larger related request later on.
What's the classic example of that?
The classic study Cialdini details involved researchers going door to door in a residential neighborhood in California. First, They asked homeowners if they would agree to put a tiny 3-inch square sign in their window that said, "Be a safe driver." A very small, easy request. Most people agreed.
Okay, no big deal.
Then, a couple of weeks later, a different researcher went back to those same houses, and also to other houses in the neighborhood, the control group. This time, they asked homeowners if they would be willing to display a huge, poorly lettered, quite ugly billboard on the front lawn that said, "Drive carefully."
Whoa, that's a massive jump from a tiny window sticker to a huge lawn billboard.
A huge jump. And the results were striking. In the control group, homeowners who hadn't received the earlier small request, only about 17% agreed to the ugly billboard. But among the homeowners who had previously agreed to the tiny window sign, an astonishing 76% now agreed to put the massive, unsightly billboard on their lawn.
Wow, 4 times as many. How did that tiny first step make such a huge difference?
Because, according to Cialdini's analysis, that small initial commitment, agreeing to the tiny sign, subtly changed the homeowner's self-image. They began to see themselves as public-spirited citizens, people who care about civic issues like safe driving.
They took on that identity.
They took on that identity. And then, when the larger request came along that was consistent with that new self-image, they felt compelled to agree to maintain consistency with who they now believe themselves to be.
That's powerful. So what are the conditions that make these commitments so incredibly strong and binding on our future behavior? When are they most effective?
Cialdini identifies 4 key conditions, based on research, under which commitments exert the strongest influence. First, they need to be active. Taking a physical action, doing something concrete, makes a commitment much stronger than just passively agreeing. This could be writing something down, signing a petition, making a verbal statement.
Like those POWs in the Korean War Cialdini mentioned.
Exactly. American POWs, held by the Chinese communists, were often asked to make seemingly small anti-American or pro-communist statements, first verbally, then writing them down, maybe just to get small privileges like extra food or letters home. But the active process of writing it themselves started to subtly shift their attitudes to align with what they had written. Companies use this too, with things like testimonial contests, where customers actively write positive statements about a product.
Okay, so active. What's second?
Second, commitments are much stronger when they are public. Making a stand visible to others, telling people about your decision or intention, dramatically increases your internal drive to maintain that stand. As the author notes, the more public a stand, the more reluctant we are to change it, because we have a strong desire to appear consistent and reliable to our peers. We don't want to lose face.
Makes sense. Third.
Third, commitments become more powerful when they are effortful. The more effort, pain, sacrifice, or even inconvenience involved in making a commitment, the stronger its effect on our self-image and our determination to stick with it. We value what we struggle for.
Like fraternity hazing rituals.
That's a classic, if controversial, example Cialdini uses. Extremely demanding and effortful initiation rituals like Hell Week often create incredibly deep loyalty and commitment among those who endure them. They have to justify the effort they went through, so they value the group membership more highly.
Okay, active, public, effortful. What's the last one?
The fourth, and perhaps most crucial for long-term change, is that the commitment must feel freely chosen or internally motivated. We need to believe we chose the action or belief voluntarily without significant external pressure, bribes, or threats.
Why is that so important?
Because when we believe we chose something freely, we take personal responsibility for it. It becomes part of our self-concept. Cialdini argues that if you want to encourage a lasting behavior change, like getting a child to be genuinely honest, not just compliant, using a barely sufficient reason, a mild suggestion or appeal to values instead of a harsh threat or large reward can lead to true interchange. The person internalizes the belief that they chose the behavior because they wanted to, because it aligns with their values, not because they were forced or bribed. This makes the behavior self-sustaining.
So once that interchange happens, that commitment almost grows its own legs, as the author puts it. It doesn't need the original reason anymore.
Precisely. Commitments that lead to this kind of interchange, especially those that are active, public, effortful, and feel freely chosen, start to generate new reasons and justifications to support the initial decision. We build a mental scaffold around the commitment. This makes it highly resilient, even if the original reason for making the commitment is later removed or proven false.
Can you give an example of that, the glowing legs idea?
Yeah, the fuel saving study is a great one. Researchers went to homeowners and encouraged them to save natural gas. To one group, they simply gave tips and asked them to save energy. To the other group, they did the same, but also promised to publish the names of energy-saving families in the local newspaper as public-spirited citizens.
Okay, so an external incentive, public recognition.
Right. And predictably, the group promised publicity saved significantly more energy initially. But here's the fascinating part. At the end of the study period, the researchers sent a letter saying, unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to publish the names after all.
So they removed the original reason for saving energy for that group.
Exactly. And what happened? When they checked gas usage again the following month, the group that had initially saved energy just based on the tips went back to their old usage levels. But the group that had been promised publicity, even though that promise was now withdrawn, actually saved even more energy than before.
More.
Because they had already made an active, public, in their minds, effortful commitment. When the external reason publicity was removed, they didn't abandon the behavior. Instead, their commitment had grown its own legs. They had generated new internal reasons for saving energy. Maybe they now saw themselves as environmentally conscious or thrifty or responsible citizens. They had taken personal ownership of the behavior, making it resilient even without the original incentive.
That's incredible. The commitment became self-perpetuating. And then there's the truly devious application of this, the lowball tactic, which really highlights the resilience of these self-generated commitments.
Ah, yes, the low ball. Car salespeople are notorious for this, though it happens elsewhere too.
How does it work exactly?
The lowball tactic starts with an ungenuine, highly attractive initial offer, like an incredible, unbeatable price on a car, designed solely to get the customer to make an initial commitment to buy that car.
So they get you to say yes based on a great deal.
Right. Once that commitment is secured, often reinforced by taking various active steps like filling out forms, arranging financing, maybe even taking a long test drive. Then, just before the final papers are signed, the original incentive, that great price, is subtly, and often with a plausible excuse, removed or reduced.
How do they justify that?
Oh, common tactics include, oops, I forgot to add the cost of the air conditioning, or there was a calculation error, or the classic, let me just check with my manager. Oh, sorry, my manager won't approve that price. We'd be losing money.
So the great deal evaporates. Why don't people just walk away then?
Because by this point, the customer has already mentally committed themselves to owning that specific car. They've invested time and effort. They've probably started imagining driving it. That initial commitment has started to grow its own legs. They've generated other reasons why they want this car beyond just the initial low price. So even when the terms become less attractive, their self-commitment often persists, and they go through with the purchase at the higher price rather than undoing the decision and starting over.
You feel psychologically trapped.
Exactly. Cialdini recounts watching this happen repeatedly with car sales, and even mentions observing it in a friend's relationship, where the initial appealing reason for the relationship proved false. But the friend still maintained the commitment because new supports had grown around it. The initial decision, no matter how objectively poor it might seem later, becomes self-justifying.
So how do we defend ourselves from being trapped by this powerful drive for consistency, especially when it's being deliberately manipulated with tactics like the foot in the door or the low ball?
Cialdini offers two main lines of defense. First, and maybe most intuitively, you need to learn to listen to your stomach signs.
Your gut feeling.
Yes, that visceral feeling of unease, that slight churning in your gut, that feeling of being cornered or trapped into complying with a request you genuinely don't want to perform. Recognize that physical sensation as a warning signal that you're likely being pressured into unwanted consistency.
So acknowledge the feeling. Then what?
When you sense it, especially in response to a compliance professional, Cialdini advises directly confronting the requester by calmly explaining that you recognize their tactic. You could say something like, I know what you're doing here with the low ball foot in the door, and I'm not going to comply based on that psychological pressure. Calling it out disarms the tactic.
That takes courage, but it sounds effective. What's the second defense for maybe more subtle situations?
For more subtle situations, or when you feel that internal pressure to justify a past decision that might have been flawed, Cialdini suggests asking yourself the heart of hearts question.
The heart of hearts question.
Yes, ask yourself privately and honestly, knowing what I now know, if I could go back in time, would I make the same choice? This question helps you cut through the fog of self-justification that consistency pressure creates. It forces you to reevaluate the decision based on its current merits and your current knowledge, unclouded by the need to simply be consistent with a past action. If the honest answer is no, it gives you permission to change course.
That's a great clarifying question. Okay, finally, We arrive at the seventh principle, which Cialdini added in later editions of the book, Principle 7. Unity the we is the shared me. This feels like a really powerful addition, highlighting a deep, almost evolutionary drive within us.
It really synthesizes a lot of related research and adds a crucial dimension.
The core idea here is that we are significantly more likely to be influenced by, to trust, and to say yes to those we perceive as being one of us, people who belong to our inner circle or share a fundamental identity with us.
And Cialdini makes a crucial distinction here. This goes beyond just simple similarity, which activates the liking principle we discussed earlier. They are like me. Unity is about a perceived shared identity. They are me, in a sense.
So it's deeper than just liking someone because they share your hobby?
Much deeper. It's about fundamental categories of belonging that create a feeling of oneness or emerged self. These often involve shared identities like family, kinship being the most powerful, but also things like race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, political affiliation, locality, people from the same town or region, or even strongly shared experiences or affiliations, like being alumni of the same demanding program or veterans of the same unit.
A sense of tribe.
Essentially, yes. Members of these we-based groups tend to intensely favor the welfare of fellow members. They often guide their actions based on fellow members' preferences and norms. And these partisan urges, Cialdini argues, are deeply rooted evolutionarily. As he bluntly states, tribalism is human nature. We are wired to favor the in-group.
So how does this incredibly powerful principle of unity play out in real life? The book provides some truly fascinating examples across various domains, doesn't it?
It really does. In business, for instance, Cialdini revisits the story of Ali Reda, the car salesman, who actually surpassed Joe Girard's legendary sales records. How did he do it? Cialdini suggests Reda's extraordinary success stemmed partly from his ability to add a full measure of ethnic we-ness, connecting deeply with customers based on shared identity, often leveraging his background in the large Middle Eastern community in Dearborn, Michigan. That shared identity fostered immediate trust and rapport.
So one of us trumped other sales tactics.
It seems so. Other research cited shows that financial misconduct is statistically more likely to be copied by financial advisors who share the same ethnicity as the original perpetrator. And a study in India found that bank loan officers approved significantly more loans, often with better terms, for applicants who shared the same religion as the loan officer. Shared identity creates preferential treatment, consciously or unconsciously.
Okay, that's business. What about something like sports? That seems like a perfect visceral example of this deep unity in action.
Oh, absolutely. The intense, sometimes seemingly irrational passion of sports fans suddenly makes complete sense through the lens of the unity principle.
Why do people get so invested?
Because, as the science fiction author Isaac Asimov, quoted by Cialdini, famously put it, whomever you root for represents you, and when he or she wins, you win. The team becomes an extension of your own identity. Their victories feel like your victories. Their losses feel personal. Your sense of self is merged with the team's fate.
That explains why people say we won when their team wins, even though they were just watching.
Exactly. Cialdini recounts the incredibly poignant story of a war veteran who had been rendered functionally mute for decades, profoundly affected by his traumatic war experiences. Yet, during a tense moment in a televised soccer match involving his national team, he suddenly broke his decades-long silence to yell advice at the screen. This highlights how deeply this profound personal identification with a we group can run, even overriding severe psychological trauma in a moment of intense shared identity.
That's incredible. It's amazing how deeply ingrained this feeling of us versus them is. What about in our closest personal relationships? How does unity manifest there?
It's fundamental. In romantic partnerships, for example, research highlighted by Cialdini shows that engaging in partnership raising, which involves consistently using pronouns like we, our, and us, and frequently referencing shared experiences and memories, is the single most effective influence approach partners can use to resolve disagreements peacefully and constructively.
More effective than logic or persuasion?
Far more effective than coercion or purely logical arguments, because it constantly reinforces and elevates the merged identity, the we-ness of the couple, making cooperation feel more natural.
Interesting. What about family?
Family, especially close genetic relatives, is perhaps the ultimate unity group. Cialdini notes that evolutionary psychology predicts, and data confirms, that grandparents, for instance, are disproportionately more likely to invest time and resources in helping their grandchildren, sometimes even more than the parents themselves, demonstrating that deep we-ness bond based on shared genetic material and the continuation of the family line.
And just living together can create a sense of unity.
Apparently so. Cialdini mentions research suggesting that both humans and animals tend to react more favorably and cooperatively towards others who simply reside in the same home environment, treating them somewhat like relatives, even as unrelated. And interestingly, observational studies suggest children who grow up seeing their parents actively care for others within the home, like grandparents or even long-term boarders, are significantly more likely to grow up to be helpful towards strangers as adults. It seems to be a learned extension of that circle of we-ness.
That's a beautiful ripple effect of unity, extending beyond the immediate family. And the examples Cialdini gives of compassion and heroism driven by unity are truly inspiring. They show how this principle can be a force for immense good when the we is defined broadly.
Absolutely. Take the incredible story of Chien Sugihara, the Japanese diplomat stationed in Lithuania during WWII. He defied direct orders from his government and risked his career and safety to handwrite thousands of transit visas for Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution.
Why did he do it?
According to accounts, his courageous decision was rooted in an expanded sense of we-ness. He chose to see these desperate people not as outsiders or members of a different group, but fundamentally as fellow human beings in desperate need, part of a larger human we.
Expanding the circle of us.
Exactly. Similarly, Cialdini recounts the story of Rabbi Marvin Tokayer trying to persuade the Japanese High Command during WWII not to hand over a group of Jewish refugees who had reached Japan. When asked why the Japanese should protect these Jews, Rabbi Tokayer simply and brilliantly stated, "Because we are Asian, like you."
Wow, he found a shared identity.
He leveraged a powerful, unexpected shared identity, Asian, that transcended religious and national differences, appealing directly to the Japanese officers' sense of unity and shared heritage in that specific context. It worked.
It sounds like actively doing things together is a huge part of forging this unity bond.
Yes, acting together, especially in synchrony, is identified as a powerful catalyst for creating feelings of unity.
Like marching or dancing together.
Precisely. Engaging in shared music and movement, things like singing together, chanting together, marching in unison, even just tapping fingers in time with someone else, creates a strong emotional sense of connection and self-other merger. Studies have shown children shared toys more generously after engaging in joint musical activities. Soldiers marching together consistently report greater group solidarity and willingness to sacrifice for each other.
Why does synchrony work so well?
Cialdini suggests it influences our non-rational emotional responses. The shared rhythm, the coordinated action, seems to bypass our analytical minds and creates a visceral feeling of oneness with the group. He even speculates this might help explain the deep, often illogical-seeming attraction many people feel towards musicians. The shared experience of music fosters a powerful sense of unity between the performer and the audience.
And there's also the element of co-creation fostering unity.
Yes, collaboratively creating something together fosters a profound sense of unity and shared ownership. Cialdini mentions a study where marketing managers were asked to rate proposed advertisements. Managers who were led to feel they had played a larger role in co-creating the ad rated it, on average, 50% more favorably than managers who saw the identical ad but felt they had less input.
They felt ownership because they helped create it.
Exactly. And smart companies are increasingly using this. They invite customers to co-create with their brands, maybe by soliciting advice on new products or features, running contests for user-generated content, or creating online communities where customers help each other. This builds loyalty precisely because it fosters that sense of unity and partnership.
And asking for advice is a form of co-creation.
Cialdini argues it's a surprisingly powerful yet simple form of co-creation. When you ask someone for their advice on a problem or decision, you're not just getting information, you're implicitly making them feel like a partner in the endeavor. It invests them in the outcome, making them feel a sense of unity with you and significantly increasing their commitment to seeing that outcome succeed. They become your supporter.
That's a great tip for collaboration. Finally, he mentions perspective taking as a way to increase unity.
Right. Actively trying to put yourself in another person's shoes to see the world from their perspective has been shown to increase the feeling of self-other overlap. It literally makes you feel more connected, more one with them, leading to greater liking, empathy, and willingness to help. It fuels the sense of unity.
So how do we defend against the unity principle being misused? It seems so fundamental.
It's nuanced because unity itself is often positive. The key defense is to be acutely aware of that subtle but crucial distinction Cialdini makes between liking they are like us and unity. They are one of us. When an appeal seems to be overly emphasizing shared identity, hey, we both grew up in the same town, you should buy from me, or as fellow members of Group X, we need to support this cause. Pause.
Ask yourself if the shared identity is being used manipulatively.
Exactly. Ask yourself, is this appeal genuinely based on mutual interest and shared values? Or is the shared identity being used primarily to trigger an unthinking tribal surprise of them response to bypass critical evaluation of the actual request? Is the we-ness relevant, or is it a smokescreen?
And for organizations using unity.
For organizations trying to build internal unity, Cialdini strongly suggests that any code of conduct or mission statement emphasizing we-ness should absolutely include a clear no-tolerance clause for ethical violations committed by members against other members or the group's principles. This needs to be framed as essential for preserving the group's unity and integrity. This helps prevent individuals from exploiting the in-group trust for personal gain, which can destroy unity from within.
Protect the we from internal exploitation. Okay, now let's bring all 7 of these powerful principles together and talk about the really critical issue: applying influence in the AI era personal and professional navigation. Cialdini makes it abundantly clear in his updated work that artificial intelligence isn't just another new technology, it's a massive amplifier of these already potent human influence tactics.
Absolutely. It's like pouring gasoline on an already existing fire. The advent of AI significantly exacerbates the very first problem Cialdini identified decades ago: the deluge of information and the resulting cognitive overload.
How does AI make that worse?
AI supercharges this informational crush. It generates content, targets messages, and floods our channels at an unprecedented scale and speed. This forces us even more deeply into relying on those mental shortcuts, that shortcut responding. Our capacity for careful, analytical thought is simply overwhelmed more often.
So the frequency of our click-run decisions increases exponentially.
Exactly. And with that increased reliance on shortcuts comes increased vulnerability to anyone or any system that knows how to trigger those shortcuts, effectively leveraging reciprocity, liking, social proof, authority, scarcity, consistency, and unity.
And beyond just the volume and frequency, AI is getting incredibly sophisticated at crafting and delivering these influences, sometimes in ways that are almost indistinguishable from genuine human interaction.
Precisely. That's the other major challenge. AI can analyze vast data sets of our online behavior, our clicks, our likes, our purchases, our social connections, the language we use to pinpoint individual psychological vulnerabilities and preferences with astonishing accuracy.
It knows our triggers better than we do sometimes.
Potentially, yes. And it can then craft hyper-personalized messages that precisely target those vulnerabilities, making persuasive appeals incredibly effective, tailored just for you. Think about it. Deepfake videos can convincingly mimic authority figures or trusted individuals. AI can generate a flood of seemingly authentic, yet entirely fraudulent signals of influence.
Like those fake reviews we talked about.
Exactly. Massive bot farms creating fake social proof.
Uh-huh.
Or automated robo-boss systems sending personalized compliments designed purely to foster commitment and liking, even though they're generated by algorithms. Remember the Dilbert comic Cialdini mentions where the soulless machine gave shallow, generic compliments? AI can make those compliments sound much more specific and sincere now.
Scary.
The bottom line is, as shortcut responding becomes even more necessary due to AI's amplification of information overload, we can expect the frequency, personalization, and sophistication of exploitative influence tactics using these 7 principles to increase dramatically.
So how do we as individuals navigate this? How do we become more discerning consumers of influence in this new algorithmically amplified landscape? What's our primary shield?
Heightened awareness is absolutely your fundamental defense. There's no substitute.
Yeah.
Understanding how these 7 principles work neurologically and psychologically, and crucially, understanding the new ways AI can leverage and amplify them is the essential first step.
Know thy enemy, or at least know thy triggers.
Exactly. Then you need to consciously practice engaging your controlled responding system, your slower, more analytical thinking, instead of automatically clicking and running on instinct or shortcut cues, especially for important decisions.
So more critical evaluation, how does that look in practice with AI?
It means you must critically evaluate the source and nature of influence cues. Don't take digital social proofs at face value anymore. Ask, is that flood of 5-star reviews genuine user sentiment, or could it be an AI-powered bot farm? Scrutinize AI-generated compliments or personalized messages. Do they feel genuinely earned, or are they perhaps algorithmically generated flattery designed to build rapport? Be deeply wary of AI-driven scarcity messages. Only 2 spots left at this price, calculated just for you. They might not reflect true limited availability, but could be dynamically generated just to trigger your loss aversion.
We need to become digital detectives almost and tune into our internal warning systems, our gut feelings.
Absolutely. You need to cultivate self-awareness as a detector. Pay closer attention to your stomach signs, that visceral feeling of unease, that nagging doubt when you suspect you're being subtly manipulated into consistency, or when an AI personalized offer feels creepily too good, too perfectly timed.
Don't dismiss that feeling.
Don't dismiss it. Treat it as valuable data. When you feel it, voice it, even if just to yourself initially. This feels like a lowball tactic.
Right.
And crucially, regularly apply that heart of hearts question we discussed. Knowing what I now know, including the potential for AI manipulation, if I could go back in time, would I make the same choice? This is a powerful tool to cut through self-justification, especially when AI might make it harder to trace the original, potentially manipulative reason for a past decision.
And Cialdini advocates for a pretty aggressive ethical response when we do detect manipulation, doesn't he? It's not just about passive defense.
Yes, he strongly does. He argues for aggressive retaliation against fraudulent influence tactics. It's not just about protecting yourself, but about protecting the integrity of our shared decision-making ecosystem. These shortcuts only work reliably if they're not constantly being exploited.
So what does retaliation look like?
It means actively pushing back. If you discover concrete evidence that a brand is using fake AI-generated reviews, boycott them and inform relevant consumer protection agencies or review platforms. If you see an establishment clearly faking lines or scarcity, walk away and consider leaving a real honest review detailing the deceptive practice. If you encounter blatant AI-generated deception presented as fact or genuine human interaction, like undisclosed deepfakes in influence campaigns, call it out publicly if you feel safe doing so. It's about fighting back when our natural, efficient cognitive shortcuts are being systematically exploited for unethical gain, signaling to companies and manipulators that such practices have consequences and will not be tolerated.
Okay, that covers personal defense. Now let's pivot to the other side, professional application. Ethical influence in business. For entrepreneurs, marketers, and copywriters using these principles, potentially with AI tools, how does understanding influence change the game and guide ethical practice in the AI era?
The overarching principle here, Cialdini emphasizes, is that in an age where AI can simulate persuasion so effectively, authentic, ethical influence becomes more crucial, not less, for long-term business success. While AI can simulate connections and personalize messages at scale, it fundamentally cannot fake genuine trust and deep, resilient human relationships. These must still be built on integrity, transparency, and delivering real value. Short-term gains from manipulative AI tactics are likely to lead to long-term brand damage when discovered.
So focus on genuine connection. How does that translate for the entrepreneur trying to build a business ethically? How can they leverage reciprocity, liking, unity, and commitment in this new landscape?
For reciprocity, the key is to consistently give genuine, unsolicited value and exceptional service first, before asking for anything significant in return. Create a positive customer experience, like the classic example of McDonald's giving a free balloon to a child, that fosters real, organic feelings of goodwill and obligation, not just transactional quid pro quo. Build a foundation of generosity.
Okay, give first. What about liking and unity?
For liking and unity, entrepreneurs should actively foster a genuine we culture, not just within their internal team, but extending outwards to their customers and community. Look for and highlight authentic similarities and shared values. Encourage cooperation towards shared goals, maybe involving customers and product development. Genuinely appreciate and recognize your community members. Critically, use AI tools to enhance real human connection, not replace it entirely. Perhaps AI can handle routine customer service queries efficiently, freeing up your human staff for deeper, more empathetic, personalized engagement that builds true rapport and loyalty.
Use AI to augment, not just automate. And commitment.
For commitment, design your customer journeys and processes to encourage active, public, where appropriate, and freely chosen commitments from customers. This could be through well-structured loyalty programs where customers feel they earn status, not just points, or programs where they might publicly endorse your brand, like sharing user-generated content, rather than just passively accumulating benefits. Make them feel invested.
Okay, that's helpful for entrepreneurs. Now, what about the marketer? They're often on the front lines of using these principles, now potentially supercharged by AI. How do they leverage social proof, authority, and scarcity ethically?
For authentic social proof, marketers must resist the immense temptation AI offers to fabricate it. Instead, leverage AI's analytical power to identify, curate, and ethically highlight genuine, positive customer reviews, compelling user-generated content, and data showing organic, growing popularity. Transparency is paramount. The cost of getting caught faking social proof in the AI age, where trust is already fragile, could be catastrophic for a brand.
So authenticity above all for social proof. What about authority?
To establish authority ethically, focus relentlessly on demonstrating true, verifiable expertise and building genuine credibility. If you're using AI to help generate testimonials or case studies, ensure they are rigorously fact-checked, represent real customer experiences accurately, and ideally are verifiable. If employing the tactic of admitting shortcomings to build trust, ensure those admissions are honest reflections of minor limitations, not manipulative ploys to mask larger problems. Be transparent about expertise.
And scarcity, that one feels particularly easy to abuse with AI.
It is. For strategic scarcity, marketers should use AI primarily to manage genuinely limited inventory or accurately communicate truly time-bound offers. Frame messages honestly, perhaps emphasizing what the customer might lose by not acting, leveraging loss aversion, but only for items or opportunities that are genuinely scarce due to real constraints, not artificial ones created solely to drive urgency. Avoid deceptive, dynamically generated false scarcity.
And you mentioned matching the message to the audience's mindset.
Yes, marketers can utilize AI ethically to better understand their audience's likely cognitive state. Are they likely to be engaging quickly and emotionally, System 1 thinking, or slowly and rationally, System 2, for this type of product or decision? Then, tailor the message style accordingly. For example, Cialdini notes music and strong visuals are highly effective in advertising for familiar, low-cost, feelings-based products where deep thinking is unlikely. But those same emotional appeals can actually undercut effectiveness for complex, high-consequence products, like financial services or enterprise software, where hard thinking is likely and detailed, rational arguments are needed. AI can help make those distinctions at scale, but the goal should be clarity, not manipulation.
That's a really practical distinction. Finally, what about the copywriter? They're the ones actually crafting these persuasive messages, often now with AI writing assistants. How do they use these principles responsibly and effectively?
For the copywriter, it's about nuanced application. Leveraging loss aversion ethically is key. Frame calls to action to thoughtfully emphasize potential losses or missed opportunities. For example, don't miss out on these exclusive benefits. Rather than just focusing solely on potential gain these benefits. Loss framing is often more motivating, but keep it truthful.
Okay, frame for loss aversion. What else?
To foster consistency, design copy that encourages small, low-friction initial commitments, like signing up for a newsletter, downloading a free guide, that logically and ethically align with a desired larger future action, like purchasing a product. Use questions in your copy that gently lead towards a yes, building conversational momentum and subtle agreement, but avoid manipulative traps.
Build momentum. How about unity?
Build unity through language. Consciously and carefully employ inclusive pronouns like we, our, and us, where appropriate to create a genuine sense of shared identity, community, and belonging between the brand and the audience. This can be particularly powerful in cutting through the noise when AI is generating vast amounts of impersonal content. Human-centric unifying language can make your message truly stand out and resonate emotionally.
Use language to connect. And finally, transparency.
Absolutely. Embrace transparency for trust. Copywriters can borrow directly from Warren Buffett's example. Don't shy away from acknowledging minor limitations, challenges, or trade-offs associated with your product or service within the copy itself. This counterintuitive move can paradoxically build immense trust and make your highlighted strengths and core value proposition far more believable, as you're perceived as being honest, balanced, and forthright, not just blindly promotional. Authenticity resonates.
So across the board, the message seems to be understand the power, but wield it ethically, especially now with AI in the mix.
That's the core takeaway for professionals, definitely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what does this all really mean for us, the listeners, as we try to navigate this increasingly influenced, algorithmically optimized world?
Well, we've journeyed through this intricate landscape of influence, haven't we? From the ancient principle of reciprocation, which subtly obligates us, all the way to the profound, unifying power of shared identity, which binds us together. These 7 principles, reciprocation, liking, social proof, authority, scarcity, commitment, and unity, they aren't just academic curiosities or clever sales tricks.
They're deeper than that.
Much deeper. They are deeply ingrained, predictable patterns wired into human nature through evolution and social conditioning. And as we've discussed at length, they are now being amplified, personalized, and leveraged by artificial intelligence in unprecedented ways, making them more potent, more pervasive, and sometimes harder to detect than ever before.
It leads to a really fundamental question, doesn't it? In a world where algorithms are becoming increasingly adept at predicting, anticipating, and subtly influencing our automatic click-run responses, often below our conscious awareness, what does it truly mean anymore to make a conscious, autonomous choice?
That's a heavy question.
How do we ensure that our decisions are genuinely our own, reflecting our true values and goals, rather than simply being the calculated, desired outcome of an algorithm-sophisticated persuasion campaign? And maybe looking outwards, how do we, collectively, contribute to building a digital ecosystem where influence is used as a force for genuine good, for connection, understanding, and progress, not just deployed relentlessly for profit or manipulation?
Your understanding of these fundamental principles of influence, especially now armed with the awareness of how AI amplifies them, is truly both a powerful shield and a potent tool. Use this knowledge proactively. Use it to discern manipulation when it's aimed at you, to protect your autonomy, and to critically evaluate the overwhelming flood of information and persuasive attempts that constantly surround you online and offline.
Be a more critical thinker.
Be more critical thinker, yes. But also, don't just play defense. Use this understanding constructively. Use it to build more genuine, trusting relationships in your own life. Use it to inspire ethical action in your communities or workplaces. Use it to foster positive change by communicating more effectively and persuasively for causes you believe in. The ultimate goal should be ensuring that influence, especially in this powerful new AI era, serves human flourishing, empathy, and understanding above all else.